For this Mythgard video, I wanted to highlight a deck that I felt was very budget friendly, that new players, if they were trying to check out the game, could use on the ladder with a limited budget and still find success. So for this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the deck list first, and then we're going to also showcase one game of ladder play. I'm going to take it on the ranked ladder and showcase how it works, but this is a pretty standard kind of mid-range list. You want to be proactive with it, and it's going to be in the colors of green and purple. And the reason that I call this a budget-friendly list is there are exactly 0 mythic cards in it and only 4 rares. The rares that this deck runs are 2 Born Again and 2 Pentacle of Flavors, and we'll talk about those when we get to them, which is right now for Born Again. Let's just start at the top of this particular deck. Born Again is a pretty safe craft. It's run in a lot of green decks. The 1 green gem requirement and the great utility it provides means that it can be played in both aggressive or mid-range decks and control, because it's just a recurring body. This is a 2/1 for 2. Stat line not great, but there's a reason for that. It returns to your hand from the boneyard at the end of your turn. So if it dies, you keep getting it back. And yeah, I mean, that's just it. It's just a consistent resource generator. People are annoyed by it. They have to find ways to deal with it, usually by giving it ephemeral or something like that. Deck's running 2 Detained Deported because this is highly versatile. It allows you to create value trades in your favor with the -2/-0, and the addition of when you play Detained, it adds Deported to your hand. That also allows you to make some pretty good tempo plays. Returning a minion to its owner's hand is fantastic because it helps you deal with things like warded minions or immortal minions, even, to buy you time, get things out of the way. It's a great card. Running 4 copies of Gallows Boy. It's a fantastic common. Good stat line for a warded creature. It trades up, like the 2/2 body looks small, but it trades up with Slayer, so that's great. Running a pair of Mavka. This is just all about, again, trading, forcing damage through some bigger bodies. 2 Raid the Tombs to draw you some cards, give you some additional resources as the game goes on. 3 Lead Astray. This is a fantastic source of removal because it shuffles. Shuffling this thing back means it will not trigger demise effects of opposing minions. It gets around warded because, again, it's not a destroy effect. Lead Astray is just a very solid card overall, so we're running the full 3 copies of this uncommon. Gamayun, I'm always mispronouncing this one, but the Harpy. This is a great card as well. Agile is one of the better keywords in the game because it gives you the choice, gives you the flexibility. 4/4 for 4 is fine, and the utility action cost to do the divination is great because you can still take actions but also kind of set up your draws. On the purple side of things, a couple of Racer and Shadow. This can be reach in the form of dealing damage to your opponent at the end of a game, but more often than not, this is just like purple's ignition. It's just a source to pay 1 and deal 2 damage to something. Now the nice thing is, it says banish at the end of your turn, but if it dies, it does go to your boneyard, so it does count towards your Journey of Souls and that trigger, so that's kind of nice. A couple of Insatient. As your collection grows, this can be replaced with Ghost in the System, which is just overall better, but I wanted to, again, keep this very budget friendly. So this is just a 2/3 body for 2, and the giving a minion ephemeral is entirely relevant. So again, you can deal with opposing Born Agains, or if you give something ephemeral and then you bounce it with Deported, it does not return to hand, it just goes away. Think of it as like a token in Magic the Gathering if you play that game. So there is some value to this, but it is also just a 2/3 for 2. Sword Saint here, this is all about the Biting Blade, giving yourself some flexibility with the +1/+0, and the life tap, which is a pretty big deal, is the reason you run Sword Saint. And then we're running the full complement of Smoke and Wind, and that's because these ninjas are versatile, and even though your opponent can likely guess which one you are playing or which is which, when you put them on the board, they have to deal with them. Shinobi of Smoke, because it does not take retaliatory damage when attacking, and it has Swift, you can set up some very good value trades to get some extra oomph from this card, and it eats through even Alpha Strike stuff because it does not take the retaliatory damage. It'll survive the Alpha Strike and then still kill the opposing minion. Shinobi of Wind is kind of similar, but in a different way, right? So while Shinobi of Smoke allows you to value trade into stuff and survive. Shinobi of Wind, you want hitting face and then dealing 2 damage to some other minion on their board to clear things up. They both serve a similar purpose, but in a different way, different capacity. Back alley Ronin, this is an uncommon. It's just all about stats. If you hit your opponent, this comes down as a 4-cost 6/5. That's a lot of stats for 4, so that's why you run it. Now we're on to the other rare that this deck runs, and this rare is so much fun. You get so much value from this. I like to say that a trip to Flavor Town is a trip to Value Town. This sets up value trades with the armor. It really sets things up because of the regen, because your minion's likely going to fully heal. The Focus 2 means it's a form of reach. The Slayer means you're almost always trading up, and the big one on this is the Blast 5. This is like an AoE clear in many cases. This is just a very powerful card, and that's why it's worth crafting. That's why it's one of your other rare slots in this budget deck. And then rounding out the end of this list are just some more big bodies. Pushy Oni, this is a 5/5 for 5, but the Awaken is very relevant. You can move things out of your way so that you can let your other minions get through, or sometimes you can hit a minion with this movement effect to push them into your other minions to set up trades. So if you put down Shinobi of Smoke and it's on one side of the board and your opponent plays a high value target on the other side of the board to avoid it, Pushy Oni can send it over in front of your smoke so you can get that trade. So this is about utility on a 5/5 body. Terragon is just a 5/6 that provides utility in a different way. Good stats for the cost. Adamant Pearl gives you this +1/+1 and the overrun. The overrun, again, allows you to kind of go over the top at times. Just having the pearl in your hand and threatening it can sometimes make your opponent take courses of action they didn't want to take. So that's what this does. And then just the one of Lantern Colossus here, because Immolation Cloak can also serve as another way to kind of like AoE clear things out of the way for you. 5/7 is a big body, and it's a good choice for a budget deck. Again, the big thing here is that I was trying to select commons and uncommons so that we had a very budget friendly deck, and I think that the rares that are in this are ones that you would certainly use in other lists, so they're safe crafts, and this is my green and purple mid-range budget friendly list. Now that I'm done talking about it, let's go play a game with it on the ladder so I can show you the deck in action. As I said, my goal here is just to showcase that you don't need a million mythics to be successful. If you're a new player, there are some very good cards in the common and the uncommon slots. You can craft a couple of rares, jump on the ladder, and find some success as long as you just kind of understand the flow of the game. I'm gonna be honest, that's gonna take some time to learn as well. This game's a little bit different. While it is a traditional attacker chooses target style game like Hearthstone, like the Elder Scrolls Legends, the presence of the lanes in this and the fact that they kind of force interaction means that strategy is a bit more important, and that's a good thing in my opinion. I think that makes the depth of this game just a bit more enjoyable. So while we wait to find a game here, and we have found one. Nesh Pints. It's a neat name. Alright, so our opponent is going first. We're going to be going second, and we have an okay starting hand here. We've got a couple of early options. So if we burn a green and a purple because of all of our 1-gem options, we can have our choice between, say, Gallows Boy or Insatient, or even the Born Again here. And we're going to start with the safe burn. Because that costs 6, we can go ahead and get rid of that. We're not going to be playing it anytime soon. We don't want to draw it until later. And then we'll see what comes up after this. And this is, again, it's a more expensive card. It's a safe burn. So we're going to go ahead and take this path. And now we're going to showcase, I think, some of the depth here. We want to be able to trade into this, but our opponent does have Impel, which means they could potentially move away. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take one of our warded Gallows Boys here, slap it down in front. Now this has Slayer 1, so during combat this deals 1 extra damage, which is why we're going to try to get this trade with the Thane. But we wanted it here because if he moves away, we want him to have to use this as well. Wow, that is a It's a very good play by our opponent. We're going to end up having to use our deported side of this to deal with it. But in the interim, we're going to end up trying to develop a ninja here because we're going to fall a little bit behind as a result of that. So what we're actually going to try to set up, you know, there's a chance we don't need to do that. What we're actually going to try to set up here is this Shinobi of the Wind into a back alley Ronin play. Now we have multiple Gallows Boy, but this is when we just got back from our journey. So I think that we're actually just going to burn this one. Now it goes away, it won't shuffle back because this is an ephemeral copy, but it still gives us the gem. And we're going to go ahead and just try to hide a ninja in the corner. Now this does telegraph pretty heavily exactly which ninja that is, but it's still something that we need to attempt. Because as I said before, the goal on our side is to set up a play with back alley Ronin, and Kara coming down is also a bit of a problem. We're going to go ahead and take the reveal here. We know what's going to happen. We're going to hit this. Now, with the impel, they can very easily move this over and take that trade. Here we're going to get rid of our second insatient. We certainly don't need multiples of them. And we want to put ourselves in a position where they cannot use impel and then take this out. We want to trade here. However, if we put this here, they can also impel and then dodge us entirely, so I think we have to. We just take the Ronin here, and hopefully we get rid of one or the other. But we are on our back foot. We are on our back foot. We are doing our best to get out of this. It's not the end of the world quite yet, but we're on our back foot. They don't have overrun yet, so if we need to get to that position, we can start chump blocking over time with Born Again. But the impel here does mean they can try to run away from you. This is an underrated power. I think new players are going to be drawn to things like infuse or like smite, and rightfully so. Uh-oh, I think they might have ordered that wrong. They moved and then impelled, but they needed to impel first to give it the ability to attack. So this works out very well for us. That was a misstep by our opponent, and we are going to punish it incredibly hard. We're going to start by taking the detained here. That means that it's going to be allowing us to set up a value trade where this survives. Deported on this means that it goes back to their hand, and then this comes in, which means we will get to clean this up. That is a great turn for us. And I think in this situation here, we're also just going to go ahead and still burn a card. We want to make sure that we're up to at least 5 so that Pushy Oni can potentially do some work. But that was a very, very good turn.
You looking for trouble?
Is that all?
So the Kara comes over here because they're trying to get rid of this. We're actually, I think, fine with this trade as well. However, if we want to just be patient, we could move this and use our Pushy Oni to send this here and take that value trade while still soaking this block, and that is the play that I really, really like. The other option would be developing Shinobi of Smoke and maybe like Mavka. Those are also both entirely fine. Yeah, I actually think I prefer that a little bit more. No, we want to save this. We're going to go ahead and move this. Talk myself out of it. We're going to go ahead and use the Pushy Oni, and he's going to move this over. So this allows us to survive the value trade there. And technically our curve tops off at 6. We have one card in the deck that costs 6, but at 5 right now we can still play everything comfortably. We have 4 cards to their 1, so we're just going to sit tight. So that's another thing that new players, I think, it's going to take them a bit to get used to, is knowing when you need to burn cards to get your resources up and when you need to hold on to them. It's going to be different for every deck, but because every card is a resource, It's a balancing act, right? If you're coming from Magic the Gathering, your lands are your lands. If you draw a land, you play your land because that's what you're supposed to do with them. But in this game, you've got to find that balance, and it's one of those things that takes time. So they get that value trade, but I think I'm still okay with that. We've got some big bodies on the board ourselves. This does not have overrun, so we could throw Born Again in front of it. We could try to set things up with Shinobi of Smoke if we want extra insurance. We could go with something like Mavka. I mean, we'll go ahead and take this trade here. Just further kind of keeps things under control on that side. And yeah, as I said, I think we're just going to take the insurance. We're going to go ahead and put Mavka down here.
You look familiar.
And that's hopefully going to deal with that with the deadly. We'd like to get Shinobi of Smoke down. And also potentially Shinobi of Wind, but I really like the idea of Smoke. So we're going to put Smoke over here. With the Swift, if they play something here to contest our Oni, then we can maybe move over. It has to have more than 4 health to survive because we can't always use Infuse. If you're wondering, Infuse is actually one of the reasons why we utilize Shinobi of Smoke so well. Pentacle of Flavor is another card that really gets it done. Like if we top deck Pentacle here, for example, because you get to choose the thing you attack, that's another thing I think new players don't necessarily realize right away. If we draw Pentacle, we didn't, but just hypothetically, and you put this here, you don't always have to attack right in front. You can attack this, and then the blast would hit the 2 on the side of this, because that's where we're going. So Pentacle would actually have allowed us to clear Kara as well. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take this attack because we've got the no retaliatory damage to worry about. And then we're going to get the damage in so that we activate Back Alley Ronin being relevant. And at this point, now we're going to take advantage of going up to 6. We didn't need to before, but we're going to go ahead and burn this card because we would like to play Born Again here just to soak, right? Unless they have overrun. This is going to be a nice safe block. We can get this damage in here, and then we're going to go ahead and play Back Alley Ronin over here because a 6/5 for 4 is just great value. So Kara starting to get a little bit concerning, a little bit out of control at that 10-7 stat line. If they found something like the Raceway, for example, that the Valkyries like to run, this could jump up to a 12 cost with overrun, but we're still safely not in danger at that point, which is why I wasn't overly concerned. And we got multiple bodies that we can, again, put in front of this. So this here, if you're not familiar, this is a huge creature, but it's also one that has fragile. So it's going to take bonus damage. So this technically deals 7 to it. We could make it go up to 8 with Infuse. Not quite enough to clear it. So at least one of these creatures is likely going to have to bite it. But I think we want to save the 6/5 for pretty obvious reasons. We're 1 off of lethal. So we've got 3, 5, 6 with the Infuse. We're so close to getting there. We just don't have a good way to do it at the moment. I'm double checking things to make sure I'm not forgetting. But I don't see the path. So yeah, we are just going to go ahead and take this trade. Now, it's going to get more powerful here. So that's why this one's going to end up being the trade. But this one at least stays alive. We take the damage, and then we're just going to try to put as many potential blockers in the way of this as we can. So we cover it so that with the impel, right, if they go anywhere, this has to attack something. So really it's, do they top deck overrun? Like, that's the concern. But again, with our health total and these having 3 health, the overrun wouldn't quite be enough. If it's the Speedway, for example, that goes up to 14, still not enough to get there, so we should be safe. This should be a victory, and we were on our back foot, and our opponent certainly played at least a mythic against us, a rare, you know, And we're hanging in there with our budget deck. Alright, so they have the horn. They're gonna get a bunch of damage in. Horn is another very powerful card. But we are gonna secure a victory here. And the Thane comes down, but again we've got lethal over here. And we're just gonna go ahead and take it now. And we're gonna say well played, but also we're gonna hit the thumbs up. My portrait is covering it, but in the bottom right at the end of every game there's a little thumb icon. Make sure you're hitting that because you get free resources for doing so. It costs you nothing, so make sure you're giving those thumbs up out. But that's it. That's a game. As I said, with a very budget friendly deck, you can certainly go out and perform even against decks that are running mythics and get those wins. You just got to kind of pay attention to the fundamentals, fight for the board. If you fall on your back foot, don't panic. Hopefully you like the deck. Hopefully this helps you. If you don't like this particular deck, take a look at what I put in it at the common and uncommon slots. Maybe try building your own budget list. If you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos.